Okie dokie. This is Sarah, and today we're going to talk about nipples a little bit more, yeah? So pinkies up. I've been working on the Propeller Pasties again. Before I get started on any of the new augments that I've proposed making, I figured I would do a second iteration of one of the older ones because I have inspiration to do so and an interesting idea, which involves persistence of vision. So I'm upgrading those propellers a bit. I'm adding some LEDs so that when they spin, the LEDs will pulsate and actually spell out words. So I'll be able to communicate actual words with my nips. Yeah? So to recap what this augment does in and of itself, it is responsible for sensing nipple growth, or fluctuations in nipple girth, in order to control the speed of propellers that are on the outside of the pasties. Electronically, not a whole lot has changed between the first iteration of the Propeller Pasties and the one that I'm developing now. What has changed a lot is the actual enclosure that all of those electronic goodies go inside of. So it's no longer a true pasty. In order to get it to work properly, it makes more sense that the device is a bra at this point in time. One of the biggest issues I had in the previous iteration was getting the tissue to stay registered inside the enclosure. That is to say, keeping the nipple tissue at a consistent distance from the sensor. If it moves around, it's not going to get accurate readings. The larger housing, something that doesn't actually attempt to adhere to the breast, just works a lot better. But because I had to make larger, more bra-like enclosures, this also meant I had to create straps. So it's a bra, and that's okay. The universal mounting plate is the same for either breast, and it's threaded on the outside so that the final, assemblies with all the electronics on them can just screw onto the hubs once they're completed. This also makes them interchangeable. So if I make different assemblies in the future, so long as they have the appropriate threading, I can just twist them onto my breasts and they'll be ready to go. The other thing that's nice about this design is that the depth of the enclosure is adjustable, and that is determined by the thickness of the light diffuser strip that spans in the middle. The other thing that's different is I got rid of the nipple kneading feature. If you remember, the first iteration had this horrific series of little rotating paddles on the inside that massaged the nipple as gears spun. Yeah, nipples and gears. It's bad. The primary indicator of the nipple's size was the speed of the propeller's rotation. So a fast spinning propeller meant a very hard nipple. In order to make the speed of the motor more granular, I had to step it down. So I offset the DC motor, added a gearbox so that it indirectly drove the propeller. The gearbox I decided to create was this interesting sun planetary gearbox thing, and on the back side of it I added these kneading paddles. Realistically, it made me shy away from ever actually wearing the device on my body, so I'm not particularly sad to see that feature go. The reason why I got rid of the planetary gearbox is because the motors have to spin a lot faster to make that POV effect work. I had to move the motor back to the center of the bra and directly drive the propeller. I designed a custom circuit board that actually is the propeller itself. The circuit board is equipped with 8 LEDs on one end and a thing called a Hall effect sensor at the other. The Hall effect sensor basically is capable of telling how fast the propeller is spinning. There's a magnet mounted into the base, and the sensor is on the back of the propeller, and each time it spins and passes that magnet, it counts. Based on the RPM, it knows what message to display on the outside by blinking LEDs at the right frequency to actually spell words or make designs. Now, in the original version of the Propeller Pasties, the Propeller Speed is what visually communicated the stiffness of the nipple. Since the motor has to spin significantly faster in order to spell these words, I'm relying on the words that the propellers spell to indicate how hard the nipple is. What words am I going to use, right? I had to come up with a scale. The thing I decided on was to just use food, like jelly beans, or marshmallows, or cheese wheels, girthy, nubby, stubby things that you'd put in your mouth and chew. Maybe marshmallow is a little bit obvious. That paints kind of a literal picture in your mind, but if you saw the word pizza on a nipple, what would you think? How big would that be? So the propeller's message is changing in real time based on how stiff the nipple actually is in the moment. But it's spinning, right? I had to come up with a way to get data from the nipple to the propeller without there being any actual trace or wire connection transmitting that data. Because if there were, it would just get knotted up, right? The way that I achieved this is by making proper use of that Hall effect sensor I mentioned earlier. When the nipple's size fluctuates, the IR distance sensor that's mounted above it senses that fluctuation. It then sends the value to the motor and tells it how fast to spin, but then the Hall effect sensor on the propeller can sense how fast the motor is spinning, and based on the RPM, it knows which message to display on the outside. Aha! So that is how I reinstate that connection between the nipple and the propeller. Once this propeller bra is completed, I'll pretty much have a Shibon bikini to wear because I have the beatbox, the hotspot for my hips, and now something for the top portion of my body as well. So I've got my my beach outfit figured out for the coming spring season. Neighbors think I'm weird.
No, they know you're weird.
Now that I have done the second meditation on the propeller pasty, I do want to start a completely new augment for a different part of my body, particularly the neck. And I'll tell you a bit more about that in the weeks to come. But until then, keep making awesome stuff out there, and as always, thank you for watching. Nips out. Or pinkies up, I don't know.